I'm Comrade Shane, and this is Juche Lessons. This episode marks the beginning of our third and final chapter of Juche Lessons, discussing guiding principles, seeking to further clarify everything we have learned so far and to answer commonly asked questions and misconceptions. Today, we will be discussing the importance of maintaining the independent stand in revolution. General Secretary Kim Jong-il said, quote, "If independence is to be defended, an independent stand must be firmly maintained in the revolution and construction." As the leader instructed, the independent stand is the fundamental stand that must be adhered to in the revolution and construction, unquote. The most important guiding principle of the Juche idea is that an independent stand must be maintained, containing the principles of Juche in ideology, independence in politics, self-sufficiency in the economy, and self-reliance in defense. The independent stand is a viewpoint deriving from the fact that the socio-historical movement is the movement of the masses for independence, and the history of human society is the history of the struggle of the popular masses for independence from all fetters. The independent stand encourages the popular masses to defend their position as masters of the revolution and construction, and enabling them to fully exercise their rights as such. That the popular masses exercise the rights as masters of the revolution and construction means that they deal with all problems of the revolution and construction in their interests, according to their own independent judgment and decision. The independent stand is a stand that opposes looking up to others without one's own opinion, and moving in an opportunistic way in any complex circumstances. Failing to resolve one's own problems by one's own decision, without independent character, in bondage to others, or following the will of others and acting against one's own interests is contrary to the independent stand. The prolonged history of the masses' struggle for independence has recorded the fact that when the masses have failed to defend and exercise their rights as masters, the party becomes paralyzed by bureaucratic practices and abuse of power, causing support for the party to wane while empowering counter-revolutionary forces. In this situation, even the gains of the revolution obtained at the cost of blood can be lost. Therefore, the masses must firmly maintain the independent stand to defend their rights as masters in order to carry out the revolution and construction successfully. That the masses fulfill their responsibility as masters of the revolution and construction means that they resolve all problems in the revolution and construction on their own responsibility and initiative as befitting masters. Trying to get one's own work done by others, or to get one's own problems solved by others, is tantamount to shirking one's responsibility as masters and relinquishing one's position as such. Without a stand to fulfill the responsibility as masters, the masses cannot succeed in revolution. Of course, one country might receive aid from the people of another country, but the decisive factor is one's own strength. If the masters fail to discharge their duties as masters, aid from others is ineffective or distributed unevenly. For example, in 1936, the People's Front in Spain established the Republic and waged a revolutionary war against counter-revolutionary Franco forces that were in collusion with the imperialist fascist forces. At that time, the former Soviet Union supplied the Spanish people with goods corresponding to 417 million rubles, and heavy weapons such as planes and tanks, and sent military advisors and volunteers. In August 1938, Spanish International Coordination Committee was founded in Paris to send an aid fund of 300 million francs and a lot of food, clothes, and medicine for 2 years. The meeting of communist parties of 17 European countries was held, and an international support campaign was active for the fighting Spanish people. 35,000 volunteers from 54 countries went to the Spanish front. However, the Spanish People's Front failed to check the counter-revolutionary advance of the Franco-fascist clique. What was the decisive reason for the failure of revolution here? Of course, it was importantly attributable to the treacherous conspiracy of imperialist powers, and in particular, open armed intervention by fascist Germany and Italy. The main reason that the Spanish People's Front failed, however, to defend the gains of revolution, despite the international support of the Spanish Revolution, lies in the fact that the People's Front failed to fortify the internal forces firmly and rely on them thoroughly. The independent stand is the requirement of the revolutionary struggle itself. The revolution and construction is the struggle of the masses for independence from all fetters, both natural and social. The revolution and construction are the undertaking for the popular masses and of the masses themselves. As the revolution and construction are their own undertaking, the masses ought to solve all problems in the undertaking on their own responsibility and initiative. If one depends on others' strength, they cannot carry out the revolution and construction and realize their own independence forever. Since the revolution and construction are the struggle for independence, depending on others' power without the independent stand is contrary to the very revolutionary essence of the revolution and construction. The independent stand must be maintained in the revolution and construction also because the revolution and construction are carried out with each nation as a unit. Just as a nation is the unit and conduit of oppression by the imperialists. country and nation is the unit of social life and stable collective of the people who were formed through a historical social process. Humanity, social beings, have lived in a certain social collective since the first days they came into being. This collective has ceaselessly changed and developed through the process of the people's struggle for independence. A clan, which can be said to be the first social collective, developed through the course of history into a national identity. A national identity which was formed in this way was combined with state machinery to become a more stable social collective, a nation, or known by other countries as a nation-state. Nations are strictly distinguished because each of them is a firm social collective that is formed on the basis of commonness in social history, language, culture, and territory. As long as states and nations exist, people inevitably live and conduct activities with the nation-state as a unit. Since the revolution and construction are carried out with each nation as a unit, the only masters of the revolution and construction in each nation and country are the people of the country. The revolution and construction in each country is the undertaking for the people of the country that must be carried out on their responsibility. Therefore, the popular masses must maintain the stand of masters toward the revolution of their own country and nation. Today, sophisticated technical means rapidly develop, and accordingly, relations and exchanges among the countries and nations become closer on the worldwide scale. The Western imperialists describe it as a world becoming, quote, a world without borders, or, quote, integrated and homogeneous, unquote. But this is nothing but absurd sophism distorting the truth of the forced appropriation and commodification of others' land, labor, and culture. As society develops and the relations and exchanges among nations become close, commonness in the life of countries and nations increases. But the commonness has an independent and individual development of each country and nation as its premise and basis. Since each country and nation has its own ideology, system, history, and culture, and shapes out its own destiny, the forced integration of the world is inconceivable. Worldwide cooperation on the scale imperialist globalization dishonestly positions itself to be is only possible through equal and voluntary international relations. The history of communist revolution and the setbacks suffered in Eastern Europe, where one weapon the imperialists used was national independence sentiments to help them undermine and break up the USSR, demonstrate clearly that the independent stand must be maintained even as society develops, with relations and exchanges among countries and nations becoming close, and the commonness among them increasing. Maintaining the independent stand is the correct way for all countries and nations to defend themselves in the revolution and construction. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any ideas for future videos you'd like to see on the channel, please leave your suggestions in the comments. Be sure to check out our other social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Finally, as an independent creator, my work on all channels and platforms is sustained through the generous donations of supporters and comrades. It allows me to focus as much time as possible on content creation. My PayPal is in the description of the video for anyone who is able and would like to contribute. Thank you and red salute, comrades!